Do you believe that destiny can literally fall from the sky? Imagine an arrogant tycoon, used to controlling everything, falling, for real, into the life of a humble and determined chambermaid. What begins as a disastrous encounter turns into a battle of personalities, filled with humor, tension, and twists no one could have predicted. But can two people from such opposite worlds really change each other? And in the end, is love enough to break down barriers? Discover in this story where a simple accident becomes the beginning of something extraordinary. Eduardo Vega stared at the horizon from his penthouse in the Marbella building, one of the tallest buildings in the city. The lights flickered beneath him like a sea of promises, but everything felt empty. He swirled the glass of whiskey in his hand, the golden liquid reflecting his expression of utter boredom. "So that's it?" he muttered to himself, looking at the parachuting equipment he had installed on the roof days before. "Let's see if a jump solves anything." Without telling anyone, he prepared himself. The adrenaline started to kick in as he put on the gear. It was an insane plan, but deep down, Eduardo wanted to feel alive again. "If I crash down there, at least I'll get out of the financial headlines and into the police," he muttered, adjusting his helmet. The jump was as chaotic as his decision. The wind was blowing hard, and controlling the parachute seemed like a skill he hadn't yet fully acquired. When Eduardo finally managed to stabilize the flight, he saw his destination approaching faster than planned. He was not landing in the safe area he had calculated, but directly at the entrance of the building. On the floor, Helena carried her cleaning cart, struggling to push it over the uneven floor. The sky seemed peaceful until something caught his attention. A loud sound, like a buzzing in the air, made her look up. "What is that?" he asked, frowning. Before she could understand, a clumsy man hanging from ropes fell almost on top of her. She let out a scream and jumped to the side, but she wasn't fast enough to avoid the impact. Eduardo landed with a thud that made Helena stumble and fall. "There! What the hell was that?" Helena exclaimed, massaging her shoulder as she stood up. Eduardo, still trying to free himself from the ropes, looked at her with a half-smile. "Let's just say I'm not very good at landing." Helena crossed her arms, clearly irritated. "And you think that's an excuse to almost kill me? Who do you think you are?" "Eduardo Vega," he said calmly, taking off his helmet. "And you?" "Helena, the maid who almost became a carpet." She shook her head, still in disbelief at what had just happened. Eduardo, on the other hand, seemed to find the situation more funny than serious. "Well, Helena, I guess we could call this an interesting start." She didn't find it funny. "It would be interesting if you had fallen anywhere else." Eduardo smiled. Something about that woman disarmed him, even if he didn't want to admit it. The next day, Eduardo was sitting in the lobby of the Marbella building, engrossed in his cell phone, reviewing work emails. He seemed oblivious to the world around him, until movement in the corner of his vision caught his attention. It was Helena, pushing her cleaning cart. The memory of the disastrous fall came back to him, and he stood up, almost without thinking. "You!" he called, his voice echoing in the silent environment. Helena stopped, looking at him with a mix of surprise and irritation. "Oh no, it's you again." She sighed, crossing her arms. "Are you going to fall on me again? Or are you just going to blame me for your ridiculous landing?" Eduardo laughed, something he rarely did. "Not this time. I wanted to apologize. It was an accident. I don't usually fall for anyone like that." Helena raised an eyebrow. "So what do you usually fall for? On jets? Sports cars? Because the way it looks, it seems like it lives in the air." He smiled, enjoying her sarcasm. "In fact, I live in meetings and contracts, which isn't as fun as it sounds." Helena gave a short laugh, returning to pushing the cart. "Right, good chat. Now if you'll excuse me, I have rooms to clean." Eduardo followed beside her, ignoring the suggestion that he should leave her alone. "How long have you been working here?" She looked at him sideways, suspicious. "Enough to know that people like you don't pay attention to the cleaning staff. Maybe I'm trying to change that." Helena stopped abruptly and looked at Eduardo with a direct look. "And why would you change? You must be really bored to want to talk to a maid." "Maybe I am," he admitted bluntly. Helena gave a slight sideways smile, but shook her head and continued pushing the cart. "Look, sir, Vega, right? You have your life full of luxury, and I have mine full of dust. We have nothing in common. So why don't you go back to your perfect world and leave me alone?" Eduardo didn't respond immediately. For the first time in years, someone had spoken to him so honestly and bluntly, and strangely, he didn't feel like retorting. "Maybe you're right, Helena, but for now, can I accompany you? Just to see what this world full of dust is like?" She sighed, in disbelief. "You are more stubborn than you seem. All good, but if you interfere with my work, you'll end up cleaning windows with me." Eduardo smiled. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he was doing something different, something that intrigued and challenged him. Eduardo couldn't get Helena out of his head. The way she spoke bluntly and was unimpressed by his wealth was something he had never encountered before. For days, he watched her from afar, curious about who she really was. One night, while he was on the building's terrace, he found himself alone with his thoughts, reflecting on the simplicity of Helena's life and the contrast with his own. "You live as if you had everything, and I live as if I had nothing," he muttered to himself, shaking the ice in the glass of whiskey. The next day, he decided to act. Upon seeing her organizing materials in the cleaning warehouse, Eduardo approached. Helena? Can I talk to you?" he asked hesitantly, something rare for him. She sighed, not hiding her impatience. "Any other excuse to invade my work, or do you want another tour of my dusty world?" He laughed, but his expression soon turned serious. "Actually, I want to know more about you. Who are you, besides a chambermaid?" Helena stared at him for a moment, as if assessing whether he was worthy of a sincere answer. "My name is Helena Rocha. I'm from a small family, and I work here to help my grandfather. He lives in the country, and the money I earn helps with his medicine and rent." Satisfied? Eduardo was silent for a few seconds, absorbing the simplicity and weight of her life. "You're incredible, you know that?" She let out an ironic laugh. "Incredible. For doing what is necessary. I just do what anyone would do in my place." "No, Helena. Most people wouldn't do it. Most would complain about life." She shrugged. "Complaining doesn't pay the bills." Eduardo was impressed. Helena didn't have any of the masks or filters he was used to seeing on the people around her. He realized that she lived more authentically than he had ever imagined possible. Later that same night, Eduardo mentally reviewed the conversation and made a decision. He was going to invite her to an important event at his company. The next morning, he approached her in the hallway. "Helena, I have an invitation for you." She looked at him suspiciously. "Invitation? For what?" "A meeting with my investors. I want you to go with me." She let out a laugh. "You're kidding, right? Why would I go to a meeting like that?" "Because you see what others don't see. And I think your honesty might be exactly what they need to hear." Helena narrowed her eyes, still skeptical. "You're crazy, but everything is fine. Let's see what this will do." Eduardo smiled, satisfied. For the first time in years, he felt like he was about to do something meaningful. Helena was restless. He never imagined that one day he would participate in a meeting with investors from one of the largest companies in the country. Sitting in Eduardo's car, she tried to hide her nervousness, but he noticed. "Relax, Helena. They don't bite. Only sometimes." Eduardo joked, trying to ease the tension. "Oh, great. Just let me know if I need a helmet." she replied, crossing her arms. Arriving at the luxurious restaurant where dinner would take place, Helena felt the weight of the place. The shiny details, the impeccably dressed waiters, everything seemed designed to intimidate. Eduardo guided her to the table, where a group of men and women in expensive suits were already waiting for them. "Gentlemen, this is Helena Rocha," Eduardo said, with a confidence that she didn't share. "She has a unique perspective that I think you will find interesting." The investors exchanged curious glances, but maintained professionalism. Helena sat next to Eduardo, feeling out of place, but determined not to show weakness. As dinner progressed, discussions began to heat up. One of the investors, a middle-aged man named Gustavo, was critical of a plan that Eduardo had presented. "That's idealism, Eduardo. We need to think about numbers, not utopias," Gustavo said, categorically. Before Eduardo could respond, Helena interjected. "Can I say something?" All eyes turned to her and Eduardo waved, giving space. "The problem is that you think of numbers as if they were the only thing that matters. But numbers don't buy confidence. And without trust, customers will leave." She looked directly at Gustavo. "If you want someone who understands the public, maybe start by listening to the public." The silence that followed was heavy, but little by little some heads began to nod. Eduardo couldn't hide a satisfied smile. However, the tranquility did not last long. His girlfriend Camilla showed up unexpectedly. She wore a stunning dress and carried a venomous gaze. "Who is this?" Camilla asked, clearly referring to Helena. Eduardo sighed, already expecting the confrontation. "Helena is a guest of mine. She's here because she has something important to say." "Guest?" Camilla laughed in disbelief. "Eduardo, she's just a maid. It's nothing more than that." Helena took a deep breath before responding. "Maid, yes. And you, what exactly is it?" The response was a direct blow. Camilla blushed, but before she could retort, Eduardo intervened. "Camilla, that's enough. I brought Helena here because she makes more of a difference in a conversation than you ever did. And to be honest, I'm tired of it all." Camilla gaped, but Eduardo completely ignored her, turning to Helena. "Are you ready to change the course of things?" "Because I am." Helena smiled, feeling for the first time that he really was serious. In the days following dinner, Eduardo realized that something inside him had changed. He felt lighter, as if he was finally taking real control of his life. Helena, on the other hand, was still processing everything that had happened. The courage to face Camilla and the investors had been spontaneous, but she wasn't sure if she wanted to continue getting involved with someone like Eduardo. One sunny afternoon, while Helena was cleaning the windows in the lobby, Eduardo appeared with an envelope in his hands. He waited until she finished before speaking. "Helena, can I steal a minute of your time?" he asked with a sincere smile. She looked at him suspiciously. "It's not like I have many minutes left, but go ahead." He handed over the envelope. Inside, there was a contract. Helena opened it, confused. "What is that?" he asked, frowning. "It's a partnership proposal. I want you to work with me, not as my employee, but as my real partner. I want to reshape the company based on the values you believe in because, you're right, numbers don't buy confidence." Helena was silent for a moment, reading the words on the paper. She looked up, assessing him. "And why would I do that?" he asked defiantly. Eduardo smiled, as if he had expected this question. "Because you want to change things, just like me. And because I want to prove that I'm not just a guy who falls badly with a parachute." She laughed in spite of herself. "That was good." Eduardo took a step forward, his expression becoming more serious. "But that's not all, Helena. I don't want you to be by my side only in business. I want you to be by my side through everything. You showed me that there can be more to life than contracts and profits. I want to start something new with you." Helena took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his words. She crossed her arms, thoughtful. "Okay, Eduardo, but on one condition." "Anything," he replied without hesitation. "You will learn to do the basics, like washing dishes, sweeping the floor. Those things you've probably never done in your life," Eduardo laughed, shaking his head. "Closed." They shook hands, but Eduardo couldn't resist and pulled her into a hug. For the first time, Helena let her guard down, feeling that he was really willing to change. Months later, Eduardo and Helena were side by side, opening a new branch of the company focused on social projects. Helena's grandfather was by her side, thrilled to see her blossom. When everyone gathered for the official photo, Helena whispered in Eduardo's ear, "Did you wash the dishes this morning?" He laughed and replied, "I'm still learning, but I'm improving." And together, they began a new chapter where love and change went hand in hand.